guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be a bit of a different video than for what you're usually used to from me. It's going to be more of a kind of story time theme. There's all these story time videos where people just tell stories on YouTube. And basically lately, as I am dragged closer to my 30s, I am going through this real big phase of like the nostalgias. So I think about, this particular event in my life happened 10 years ago. Oh my gosh, this was 7 years ago. Oh my gosh, I've been living in Scotland for 5 years now. And I've just been thinking a lot about these times. And so today I thought I would kind of relive for you my very first summer on field school and tell you some stories about the time when I went there, alongside some pictures that I have selected from my archives of me way back when. And also to maybe give some people some idea of what your field school will be like, not necessarily in terms of the archaeology, but kind of the more social aspect and what happens. I'm not going to be specifically talking about the archaeology and what sites I was on and what I was digging, because as I've said previously, I don't have permission to do that. If I ever gain that permission, hands down I will talk about it, but we'll see. All that stuff has to get published before I can talk about it. So we're just gonna jump right in and take the time machine and go all the way back to the summer of 2010, which is the first summer that I went on field school in the Kingdom of Jordan. It was partially because of this field school being offered that I decided to go at my program at university, because I immediately saw that they were taking us to the Middle East, and because that was initially what I was interested in, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah. To give you a bit of context, because all archaeologists know that that is important. So about a month before we went to our field school, we had kind of like a big meeting about it where they told us all the kinds of things that we would be doing, what to pack, the kind of overall schedule of what was going to be going on, what kind of like immunizations we needed, what life was going to be like when we were over there, because it is different. It is a different culture, it's a different part of the world, it's a different climate, there's a lot of things that you have to get used to. So one of the things that I told us was that we have to really adjust our kind of hygiene routines, because over in Jordan they have very limited access to water in comparison to Canada. So you can't just wake up or get home after a long day and take a 20-minute shower. Basically the way that it works is that everyone has tanks on their roofs, the water truck comes around once a week, fills up the tank, and then that's what you have for the week to use. You can pay to get the tank refilled, obviously, but it's quite expensive, and hotels tend to have more tanks, which is where we were staying, but they basically said you have to make sure that you are taking military showers, which is you get wet, turn the water off, shampoo, soap, rinse it off, turn off the water, condition, do whatever, rinse yourself off. You can't just have like a long-standing shower. And at this point I was really determined to be like very by the book. So one of the other guidelines that they gave us, which you will notice in the photos that have been taken, is a dress code. So basically the general rule was shoulders and knees covered. I was determined to be like really full on with all this stuff. So I made the decision before we went that at that time I was going to just really cut a lot of the fuss out of my shower routine by cutting off all my hair. So basically I went from this, which by the way is a photo of me holding a Olympic gold medal in curling beside John Morris, who won that medal. He actually went to my university and came and did a talk after the Vancouver Olympics, so not a big deal, to this, which is quite a change. I just kind of decided to do it because I thought it would be so much easier to handle my hair when it was much shorter. Going back, some regrets there, mostly in the hairdresser that I went to. No offense to her, but she kind of gave me like the 30s short haircut, whereas I was more going for like a trendy pixie look, which I got later, but whatever. I definitely got mistaken for being a dude after I got that haircut. I remember going to meet my mom at a restaurant to show her my haircut, and the waitress from behind assumed I was a guy because I was actually wearing this shirt, which is quite big and shapeless. My boyfriend at the time hated it, but I liked it, and that's all that mattered. So how we got there was we took a flight from Toronto Pearson and just dropped over in London Heathrow, and then flew from London Heathrow to the Amman airport, where we were going to get picked up by people from the project who had gone over there earlier. I was traveling with 4 of my friends all on the same flight, and the first bit of that flight was great. We had free booze on the plane. It was fantastic. And then when we had our stopover in London, my friends went to go explore London because we had like 4 or 5 hours, whereas I was like really paranoid about missing our plane, so I decided to stay in the airport. I had also started feeling not so great when we got to Heathrow Airport. And I've never been travel sick or like car sick or seasick in my entire life. And I kind of like felt really unwell in my intestines. Still don't know what caused it. It's something that's happened to me 1 or 2 times since when I've been on planes. I don't know if it's the pressure, if it's anxiety or something, but I kind of just felt like I had like these bubbles of, I guess you could say, gas in my intestine that needed to be like popped, but like they weren't gonna like, you know, come out or anything. It just felt, my like entire intestinal system just felt really weird, and I didn't really know what to do about it. I kind of just thought, okay, well, it'll just go away, I'll be fine. I'd taken all the medication that you're supposed to take for your stomach when you're going over to a foreign country where sometimes their hygiene standards aren't the same, or they've got different bacteria, so your gut needs to be able to adjust. But I just really wasn't feeling good. But I just was determined to soldier through. So my friends came back and we got on our second flight, which was about 4 hours, and I was doing okay, I was doing okay, I was doing okay, and then I just started really not doing okay in our flight. And I think we were actually just flying over Israel at that point. We were very close to landing, and it was the first time in my life I had to use the airsick bag, and I vomited up the airplane meal that I had eaten about an hour earlier. I managed to do it quietly enough that my friend that I was sitting beside didn't even notice, but I rang the bell for the stewardess. I felt really bad about having to give her a bag full of my vomit, basically, and she was very kind. She like brought me some like ginger ale and like hot towels and wet towels and like lemon water to try and help me feel better, which was very kind of her. I didn't vomit again on the plane, but we landed and we went through, and we were going through like immigration stuff, and there was a really, really big line, and I was still feeling like super not great. So I decided while I was waiting for my friends to get to the front of the line who were saving my spot that I was just kind of gonna lie down because I just like couldn't stand up. I was just feeling so unwell. And of course people noticed. They basically pulled me into a room with one of my friends. She came with me and were like, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? Do you have a disease? Like, obviously they don't want to let someone into the country who's like so ill that they can't stand up, which is very understandable. They were giving me like juice and stuff to help me make me feel better. I think I can't remember, but I think someone came and like checked my blood pressure and stuff. At the end of the day, for whatever reason, they decided to let me go because I guess I wasn't like passing out or anything. My other friends who'd come and who had flown with went and gotten all of our luggage. So once I got released, we just went through. We got met again by one of the project directors. So she was very kind. She just said, okay, well, if you're not feeling that good and like, you know, you just let me know if I need to pull over the car. We got in the car, we started driving, and at some point during the journey when we were driving from the airport, I was like, you need to pull over this car. And the first real introduction I ever had with Jordanian soil was when I vomited on the side of the road. So that was great fun. We made it successfully to the hotel where we were staying in the town that we were in, and went to bed. I took some Gravol, which I had with me, and I hadn't taken it earlier because I knew that it was supposed to make you really drowsy, and I didn't want to like miss my flights or like fall asleep in the airport or something. I had a good reason at the time. I thought not to take it, so I didn't. I went next morning, I woke up and I felt fine. So the first couple days were mostly kind of like waiting for other people to arrive because not everyone came over on the same planes, and then doing tours of the place that we were staying. So the town that we were staying in is called Madaba. It is very close to like the Dead Sea region. It's about, I think, an hour south of Amman, and it's interesting because it's got about a half Christian, half Muslim population, and it's really famous for its mosaics. And the most famous mosaic from this town is the Madaba map, which is a map of like the Holy Land kind of area in the floor of a church that's, I couldn't tell you how many thousands of years old, but it's quite old, and it's one of the first maps of that area. So the first couple days after everyone arrived, they took us for a bunch of tours around the region, to like Borsas, to just around the town of Madaba. There's like a museum there, and there's like an archaeological site like in the middle of the city that you can look at. And there's again, a lot of famous churches. So one of the things that everyone started to notice when we were on all these tours is these pictures of the King of Jordan and his family everywhere. And basically the way this works is that apparently there's like, you get a tax break as a business owner if you have a picture of him in your house. So everyone has them everywhere. It's a huge propaganda thing, and there's all these different ones. Like there's ones like this one where it's like him and his family. There's like him dressed up in his like traditional outfits. There's him with all of his like previous kings before him and his dad. They're everywhere. So this next picture as well is just an example of like some of the stuff that we were going to see. I think this is again in the middle of Madaba, and it's a Roman road that's going through it. And then we also have this picture, which I picked out particularly because if you can see the sunglasses on the floor. So obviously we were walking around these mosaics in a like elevated walkway, and we were all leaning over it, and I can't remember whose sunglasses it was, but somebody's sunglasses fell off their head onto the mosaic while we were in the middle of this tour, which was a kind of like a moment for everyone. I don't think they actually got them back, but it was quite funny when you weren't the person that was happening to. And then this is the only picture that I'm going to show of me actually on site. This is when we were at site, so you can see it's quite barren. There's not like trees. It's very like, it's not like sandy desert, it's like rocky desert. And that's me dressed up in my excavating gear. And then I have my baseball hat and my keffiyeh on as well. It's really good, as I've said previously, for keeping the sun off the back of your neck, and it's just like a useful piece of fabric to have around for a variety of reasons. Like you can wet it and help cool yourself down. It's also good for when it's very windy. You can help make it a dust screen across your face. Like a lot of people would end up wearing their keffiyehs like that because it just helped protect your face, because the wind could be quite harsh. We had some very, very windy days on the top of our site because we were on what's called a tell, which is basically kind of like a man-made hill in the middle of nowhere, so you have no real protection from the elements until your square gets quite far down. So during the week, basically our schedule was, you're up at about 4, you go and you have breakfast, you get dressed, we leave the accommodation at about 5. It took about a half hour to get to site, and then we were generally on site digging by about 6. So it took us about a half hour to walk up the hill, unload all the tools from the tent, and then go to our respective sites that we were on. And then we would stop digging at about 11:30, pack everything up, go back to the hotel, and then have a nap in the afternoon during the hottest part of the day. And then the latter part of the day was spent doing what we called lab work. So you could be washing pottery, you could be dry brushing bones, because we found animal bones and stuff like that that need to be analyzed. People who had particular skills would like draw pottery. I supervised catching up on all of their paperwork. It was a good system to make sure that like everything was getting done every day and we weren't falling too far behind in any particular aspects of what we were doing, particularly the paperwork. So that schedule we kept from Monday to Friday, and then we had Saturdays and Sundays off. We would usually go out for a couple drinks on a Friday. We were lucky in that because our town was half Christian, there's actually quite a lot of liquor stores around. There was actually one right across the street from our hotel, like literally across the street, and the guy would open it for us whenever we needed alcohol, which was pretty dangerous. But during the weekends, obviously, you don't want to just spend your entire trip just getting wasted the whole time. As well, that's obviously not very courteous for the other hotel guests, and it's not a very healthy thing to do, is to just get drunk your entire weekend. And as well, in order to make sure that we were fully experiencing the culture of where we were, our field school organized for us to do weekend trips. All of these except for one were at like no extra cost. They were all included in the cost of our field school. And we had a different place that we went to every weekend. And these trips would happen on a Saturday, they would take most of the day, and then Sunday was kind of like your rest day. So our first trip was to Amman, which is the capital of Jordan. And the first place that we went to was the Acropolis there. So it's very noticeable in the middle of the city. It's like an entire archaeological park. You go there. We got a free pass in because we were an official field school, so we got free entry into all of these sites, which was very convenient. And one of our profs came with us. They kind of served as a guide, and they took us through like the basic bits of the park, and then we all got to just kind of like run free and do whatever we wanted. And it was quite nice because there is not so much of a restriction on where you can and can't go there. Maybe there is now, I don't know what it's been like since. And so we spent a lot of time climbing all over the place, as you can see, and just kind of exploring around the park. There was a little museum in there which had all of these different displays. So basically that's the way that most of our trips would work, is we would go to a place and we would get a bit of a guided tour for the first little bit, and then we'd just be able to run around and do whatever we want. The first weekend you could either go to the Acropolis, do that for a couple hours, and then get on the bus and go back to Madaba, or they gave us the option so you could stay a bit longer and then arrange your own transport to get back, which is basically going up to a taxi driver and negotiating a fee to bring you back to Madaba, because that was quite a regular thing that would happen. My friends and I obviously decided that we were going to stay for the rest of the day because there's a lot of stuff to do in Amman. There was a whole bottom part of the archaeological park. This next picture is from the theater that's at the bottom of the and like across the street from the Acropolis, and they actually was really cool. They also had like a band that came out and did a performance while we were there, which was quite interesting. Then we all went for a meal, and we also chose this time to go to the mall, the Mecca Mall as it's actually called, because we all just thought that was, I don't know, for some reason would be really interesting to go. So we went shopping and bought a couple things. This is also where I began my journey of trying to have McDonald's in every country that I've ever been to, which I've fallen off the bandwagon for. And there's no particular reason why. I don't really love McDonald's. It's not like my favorite fast food place, but I just thought it would be funny and interesting to have McDonald's while I was in the middle of the Middle East. Picture that you saw in the beginning was me eating some McDonald's French fries from the Middle East. And one of the things I found really cool about doing that was that when you look at the packaging, it actually says made in the Kingdom of Jordan or whatever, rather than made in the USA. Yeah, so we had a really nice time doing that, and we took a cab back to Madaba. There were about 8 of us, so we took two cabs actually, and then went back on with our week. So the next weekend we spent in the city of Jerash, which is to the north. It's a big Roman city. Again, as you'll see here, big Roman road. And lots of interesting stuff. There's like an Nymphaeum there. There's a hippodrome where they did a display for us, which included gladiator fights and chariot racing. We would have 1 or 2 weekends planned activities, and then we would have kind of like a weekend to do whatever we want. So the next weekend, as far as I can recall, we decided to go to the Dead Sea. Now this is something that I highly recommend. It was great. You basically, there's a bunch of resorts that you can pay to get into, or there's a public beach that you pay to get into. You need to bring your own towel. And you just go. They will have like an actual pool area for you to play in that's with fresh water, and then you can also go down to the Dead Sea and swim in it and do the whole like, oh, I'm floating in the Dead Sea thing. Put on some of the mud, scrape it off. It's at this point that generally everyone realizes that no, they actually don't have a tan yet. Because the first couple weeks, you know, you're out in the sun and you think that you've got a tan, and you're like, oh, this is so great, you know, I'm gonna come back looking so sun-kissed and beautiful. And then you go to the Dead Sea, you put the mud on, which is very deeply exfoliating, you wash it off, and you realize that your entire tan was actually dirt. That's just been ingrained in your skin from the wind and all of the work that you've been doing, and you just haven't been able to get it off with like a standard washcloth when you're in the shower. This is also where I discovered one of the things that I didn't remember to pack was flip-flops. And I'm including this picture here because these are the flip-flops that I bought when I was at the Dead Sea and I discovered that the sand was too hot to walk on. These are children's flip-flops because my feet are abnormally small, and they are the best flip-flops I've ever owned in my entire life, and the day that they broke I cried a little. So I just had to put a bit of a tribute in there for them. This next picture, I'm not sure exactly when this was taken on my dig because, you know, events just kind of blur together. I remember very, like, specifically stuff that happened at the beginning and the end, and the middle all just kind of gets mixed up. But this is when we went to Mount Nebo to watch the sunset over the mountains, the Holy Land, Israel, whatever you want to call it. This is kind of a tradition that happened on our dig. there was a takeaway or like a pizza shop across the street from our hotel again, called Broasted Chicken, which is a specific way that he would cook his chicken, and he made really good pizza. So what we did is a bunch of us got together, we ordered a ton of pizzas, and then we took taxis out to Mount Nebo and just ate some pizza, had something to drink, talked, and watched the sun go down. It was a really lovely evening for us. And then the highlight last weekend of our trip is going to Petra, which is the very famous from the Indiana Jones and Transformers movies. It's basically a city that was carved into the stone by a people called the Nabateans. This was, you know, kind of like, it's the big weekend, it's the big final send-off before everyone goes home. We're all very much looking forward to it. It was one of the trips that the school or the project didn't actually organize. So they would make sure that we had our free admission. So we were given the paper that said we're allowed to get them for free, but the students had to organize it themselves. It was a combination best and worst for me. It's like quite a long ride down there. So a couple of the senior students who'd already been on this field school before were the ones who were in charge of organizing it. So they got us a bus to get down there. They organized where we were staying and everything. Now, by this point, obviously everyone's kind of running a bit low on money. And the senior students, when they were organizing, they gave us a choice. They said they were staying at a hotel closer into town that had a pool and was more expensive. And because they, you know, they knew that this was coming at the end of the trip, they'd saved up for it, whatever. Our hotel that they booked for us was less expensive. And I think, if I'm not incorrect, it was about 10 JD a night, which is about 10 pounds or like less than $20 Canadian. And everyone, all the students were just like, yeah, that's great, it's cheap, whatever. As we got there, we realized, maybe this wasn't the best choice, because it was actually at the very, very top of the valley that leads down to Petra. So the way that it kind of works is you drive in at the top of the hill, and then you kind of do a bit of a switchback, and then you drive through the main town, and then at the very other end of the town is the beginning to the entrance into Petra, which itself is a mile long. So it's quite long, and it's quite a difference in height. So our hotel that we were staying in, the majority of the junior first-time students, was up at the top, and then the senior students were staying down at the bottom. So we all got dropped off at this place. And we were staying like 3 or 4 people to a room, and it was some people had to like share bathrooms. It was very much like a hostel atmosphere. Hostel, not hostile. It was hands down one of the worst hotel stays I've ever had in my life because of my allergies. So I am allergic to like dust mites and mold, and this place definitely did not meet the cleaning standards of the other places I've slept in. I just remember that the first night we all trekked like down into the city to go have dinner and had to trek all the way back up. I went to sleep. I think I actually slept on top of the covers, and I hadn't brought any allergy medication with me, which was really stupid, but I woke up. I just remember waking up in the middle of the night and like I couldn't breathe because I was so congested, and I was like scratching my legs. And again, I woke up at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, which was earlier than everyone else because we were all sleeping in. And my legs were, the only time in my life, were covered in hives. It was awful. It was so bad. I was just like, I can't do it. So I got up and like went and sat in the veranda where they had like tea and coffee, and just waited a couple hours for everyone else to wake up because I just couldn't sleep. So after I waited for that, we all, I think, got picked up again and driven to the front entrance of Petra and got in for free, which was great. As you go down towards the official entrance, you'll notice all of the tourist trap shops start to pop up. So again, I've included some photos here of the like all the Indiana Jones themed stuff that was appearing as you get closer and closer to the entrance of Petra. So yeah, we've got the coffee shop and the snack shop. That's lovely. After you get in through the official entrance, you have to walk down another avenue to get down to the Seek, and you can either walk or you can ride. Now, technically these rides are supposed to be included in your entrance fee for Petra, but the guys that own the horses always ask you for tips at the end of it. I'm by no means a rider, but I thought, oh yeah, this will be fun. So this picture again is me on my horse, because I thought, you know, it's the beginning of the day, I don't want to waste too much energy. So my horse and I just walked down to the bottom of the Seek, which was, you know, a bit of a letdown, but that's fine. I paid the guy at the end, I gave him his tip. I actually once saw a woman galloping up, like, who was an actual rider galloping on one of those horses, which looked like a really fun time, and I wish I could have done, but obviously didn't. So as you're walking down this alleyway, as you can see in the background from my photo, there are these things, they're called like the God blocks, and they are again like tomb altar things carved out of the rock by the Nabateans. There's a couple tombs on your way down that you get to see, and then you get to the Seek entrance, which is basically this water carved channel that leads you into Petra, and is very like windy, and like if you're ever going to go to Petra, I 100% recommend that you need to do it at dawn. So basically the park opens at like 6 a.m. and you need to be at the gate at 6 a.m. because A, there's less people and there's not a huge jam waiting to get into the park ruining all your photos, and B, just watching the sun like reflect off of all the stone, because it's this beautiful like pink sandstone. Watching all the sun reflect off of it as you go through it is really beautiful. So this is the traditional entryway. It used to be also quite dangerous because it was very prone to flash floods during the rainy season. But as you can see, the carving and stuff still happens inside of here. So this next photo is if you can squint your eyes a bit to see it, is actually a man leading a camel as a part of a caravan into Petra as a part of the Seek, which is really cool. We'd actually learned about that particular carving in class earlier that year, so it was really cool to just like see it in person. And then the next one here is me lying in a water channel in the Seek. As we were walking through. The Nabateans were people that were very well known for their water management systems, so channels like this were used to bring water to where they needed it in the desert. And then this photo obviously is the treasury, the very famous shot from the Indiana Jones movie, the third one. It's really crazy. Like when we knew that it was about to be around the corner, someone turned on the Indiana Jones theme and we all walked through and saw it as like the dun 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 was playing. It was a really amazing moment. And again, because we'd gone into the park at 6 a.m., there was virtually nobody else there yet. So we all got to get individual photos in front of the treasury, as you see here. It's a really awe-inspiring monument, although I will say there's nothing absolutely inside of it. The things that I'm actually standing against is you can see down underneath it. They've excavated and you can see that they've actually also carved things underneath the treasury, which is quite interesting. And there's a little rest spot there that you can go, and then you basically, the way that it works is once you're done taking all your photos there is you turn right and then you go into the rest of the park of the city. So you can either go the main route all the way through the city up, climbing up a bunch of stairs to go see the monastery, which is the other famous monument there that is featured in one of the Transformers, the like Shia LaBeouf Transformers movies. Or you can kind of go your own way. There's really not a lot of restrictions in this park about where you can and cannot climb. You just need to be smart because obviously you don't want to like fall down a ravine. And we had all heard a story of a previous student who had kind of gone off by himself and fallen off a wall and broken both of his arms on like the last part of the trip. So we were all very keen for that not to happen. This is a shot of kind of as you're just turning right and you're going down into the main alleyway of the park. So there's lots of tombs on either side that you can see. And just after this bit, there is an option to start going up some stairs to the left. And all of us were like, oh yeah, we'll go climb things, that's fine. Like an hour and a half later, we actually merged onto what's called the High Place, very aptly named, which gives you a view of the entire park. It has a bunch of altars up there that you can see, and it is a really beautiful view. So this picture is me sitting somewhere around the High Place, and the whole park is just like, you can't really see it because there's rocks in the way, but the whole park is in the background. So that was a really cool thing, and in retrospect, a good thing to do at the beginning of the day when you have lots of energy and it's not too hot and you're not very low on water. Because obviously you can bring stuff into the park, you can bring your own water, you can bring food, but the more tired you get, the heavier it is. And once you're in the park, buying food and ice cream, which everyone peddles there, is much more expensive because, you know, you don't want to just like hike all the way back out and come in. I highly recommend doing that kind of route for your first thing of the day because it gets like one of the big things out of the way for you. After we got off the high place, we took kind of like a back route down and saw some more tombs. I don't know how many people may or may not know about this, but up until very recently, Petra itself wasn't a huge tourist attraction, and it was largely inhabited by Bedouin. And for millennia, hundreds of years, they made their homes in these tombs of the Nabateans. They had long been looted, like you couldn't, they generally didn't come across like great treasures and get rid of them or whatever. They were already empty, and they would move in and they would basically modify them in these caves into being their homes, and they lived in the valley. This picture is just an example of one of the tombs that was clearly repurposed as a home. The Bedouin that used to live in Petra now live in a town that was built for them just out of the way, and a lot of them still come and work in Petra every single day selling souvenirs or camel rides or tours or whatever, but they were basically forced by the government to move out of it because they were destroying the site by modifying it for their own human usage, which is a whole other thing. But yeah, so if you guys are more interested in learning about what that life was like, I would highly recommend buying the book Married to a Bedouin by Marguerite van Geldermalsen, who is a woman from New Zealand who came over in the late 70s, early 80s, and married one of these men who lived in a cave, and lived in a cave in Petra and had a bunch of kids for a while until everyone got moved out to the new village. And she actually still lives and works in Petra, and she has like a silver jewelry stall that she sells her book and jewelry from, and that's signed. So I actually have a signed copy of her book because I have met her. But it's a really interesting book to read about because she's not trying to be like, you know, studying these people. It was just kind of about like her life and how she lived it and what it was like for her being a Western woman who was just like backpacking through the country, and she just met this dude and was like, hey, let's go live in a cave together. Like, it's a really interesting story, so I highly recommend the book. My friends and I, like I said, we went and we just did like as much of the park as we could in an entire day. We only had one day to do it, and we definitely didn't get the chance to finish the entire park. I would, if you're ever planning on traveling to Jordan, I would highly recommend budgeting a couple days to go to Petra rather than just one. You can see all the highlights in one day, but I don't really think you can truly appreciate it unless you go more than once, because every time you go you find something new. So after that big trip to Petra, we just kind of ended up finishing things off at our field school. Everyone started going home. We had our last party, and everyone started flying out, and my friends and I drove across the border to Israel. So basically, when we started planning this trip to Jordan, we said to me and 3 of my friends said to ourselves, okay, well, we're over in the Middle East. When are we ever going to have this opportunity again? Let's go to Israel and Egypt after the field school, because we thought it was, you know, we were already over there and it would just be a great opportunity for us to kind of go again and see all of these amazing things that we'd been learning about in the classroom for ages. So we had an extra like 2.5-week trip tagged onto the end of our field school. So then we spent about a week in Israel and a week in Egypt seeing all the sites, which was, again, like an amazing experience. That's the end of a very long and rambling video. We'll see how far I can cut this down to, but I don't think story times are necessarily supposed to be short videos. And I'm already condensing quite a lot into this video and leaving out quite a bit, not necessarily because I want to, but you know, it's difficult to fit 6 weeks of your life into under however long this video ends up being. As per usual, I hope that this video has been in some way entertaining, helpful, useful for people. If you absolutely hated this video, give me a dislike or say so in the comments if you never want me to do it again. I try to listen to you guys when you give me feedback. If you enjoyed this and you would maybe like to hear more potentially about my trip to Israel and Egypt with my friends, let me know in the comments, give me a like. As per usual, all of my social media is down below. The one thing about these videos is that if you like them and you want me to do more of them, I can probably put out videos more regularly because they don't involve as much preparation time as my other videos when I try to research them. And it doesn't mean that I'm never going to do informational videos again. I do have stuff planned, but this just allows me to kind of break things up a bit, allow a bit more flexibility, and give you a bit more content. Thank you so much guys for watching. I will see you next time. Bye!